Okay, I'm going to call to order this regular meeting of council. First, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional unceded territory of the Stanawas First Nation. I'll move that the October 22nd, 2025 regular council meeting agenda be adopted with the removal of items 6C and 6D, and with an additional late item regarding a grant for the tennis courts.
Those items again?
6C and 6D,
Sorry, it's not working on
C and 6D, and with it a late item to do with the grant application for tennis courts. And second by Councillor Savage. And just speaking to 6C and 6D, staff has just requested that those minutes be removed from the consent agenda. It has to do with the accessibility committee, and staff can, I guess, respond to as to why, but they just need to go back to the committee for discussion. And, well, if needed, yeah. The minutes are going back to the committee, that's all. All right, Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. I move that the following two motions are added to the agenda, that insert name be appointed as the chair of the Design Select Committee, that insert name be appointed as the alternate chair of the Design Select Committee.
Do you have those available? Or I think we would just treat that as a lead item, Councillor Savage.
Okay.
So just announce at the beginning of the meeting, you're gonna have a late item having to do with the appointments for the design committee.
Yep.
Okay. Anything further? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll move then to call in question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. That moves us on to general matters. We have mayor and council verbal updates. Councillor Lerner, we can start at your end this evening.
Nothing to report, but thank you.
Councillor Savage
Nothing for me, thank you, except it's getting awfully cold out there.
and Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you. Just a little update. The Parks and Trails Committee had their meeting last week, and we're pleased to have the active transportation consultants attend the meeting. And they've begun work on the active transportation plan, starting to get to know Lantzville, and also they've put out a survey which can be accessed on the district website. So if you haven't seen the survey, hopefully you'll find time to complete it. It's just a 5-minute survey, it doesn't take long. They're very excited to be working in collaboration with the committee, as there's some areas where our work overlaps. And staff has told me that they'll be setting a date for a second meeting in the near future, hopefully before the holidays. So, thank you, that's all.
Okay, for myself, nothing really major to update on, but I am wearing a Lantzville Volunteer Firefighters Association t-shirt. They are for sale, so that's my plug for the association. Do support them. I actually bought 2 of these shirts because I'm getting tired of being ridiculed for only wearing Kirkland. So now I have added 2 of these to my wardrobe. And nonetheless, the monies raised do go towards the ongoing projects of the Volunteer Firefighter Association. So please get out and support them. And if you want to find their stuff, you just go on Facebook. They have a Facebook page and you can reach someone that way. All right, other than that, we'll move on. So we have the consent agenda. So again, through council, any additional items to be removed? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll move the consent agenda with items A, B, and E. A, B, and E. Yeah, I'll just move those 3. Is there a seconder? Sorry. Second by Councillor Savage. And I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Now we have a public input period. We have one person in the gallery, so person is recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record, may speak once for up to 2 minutes unless council resolves otherwise, and are limited to providing comment regarding listed items items listed on this evening's agenda. Comments must be directed to the chair, must not be directed to individual council members, staff, or the audience. It must not include personnel issues. Okay, I don't see anybody running to the microphone. Anybody remotely registered? Nobody? Okay, thank you. So moving on to under 9 legislative matters, we have 9A, which is the District of Lantzville Fire Protection Service Bylaw 185, 2019 Amendment Operational Policy, District of Lantzville Bylaw number 419, 2025. There's several motions there, but through to Chief Rukas, is there anything to introduce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, this is a housekeeping item with the update of the fire services agreement through the province. The local assistant to the fire commissioner have been removed from the fire departments throughout the province, and they've placed the onus of fire inspections and fire investigations onto the local municipalities and cities and regional districts throughout the province. Part of the requirement of the Fire Services Act is that we name the positions in which are responsible for taking care of those items, and that's just what this update to the current fire protection bylaw is doing.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, I'll get the first motion on the floor then, so that the District of Lantzville Fire Protection Service Bylaw number 185, 2019 Amendment, Operational Policy, District of Lantzville Bylaw number 419, 2025 be given first reading. Is there a seconder? Second by Councilor Lerner. I'll call the question. All those in favor, opposed, is carried unanimously. I'll just do the second one. So that the District of Lantzville Fire Protection Services Bylaw 185, 2019 Amendment, Operational Policy, District of Lantzville Bylaw number 419, 2025 be given second reading. Is there a seconder? Second by Councilor Savage. Discussion. Okay, hearing nothing, I'll move to call in question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. That the District of Lantzville Fire Protection Services Bylaw 185, 2019 Amendment, Operational Policy, District of Lantzville Bylaw number 419, 2025 be given third reading. Is there a second? Or second by Councilor Lerner. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, opposed, that is carried unanimously. That takes us on to commission recommendations. So we have listed under 11A, Accessibility Advisory Committee. There's a series of motions. Is someone prepared to make the first motion? Okay, go ahead, Councilor Lerner.
Sorry, as a point of order, did we miss the last one with the fire protection services? I thought we just went through 3. I don't think we did the third reading. I could be mistaken
We
there.
just did third reading.
Okay, thank you.
I just did it so fast that I was like, boom, done. Okay, Councilor Lerner, go ahead.
The council direct the committee to compile an ongoing priority list for improved items to recommend to council.
Okay, second by Councilor Savage, and for discussion, go ahead, Councilor Lerner, if you wish. Councilor Savage.
Yes, thank you. I would move that we refer this motion and number 2 back to the Accessibility Advisory Committee.
All right. Okay, let's just do the first one. I think it's just cleaner that way. So the motion is to refer the motion that's just being moved and seconded back to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Okay, I'll second that, and then Councilor Savage, if you would.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's just a little premature because what we're doing is we're compiling somewhat of a brainstorming list per the accessibility plan to prioritize things and work them out. And then when we compile that list, we will be coming up with the ones to recommend to council. So we haven't reached that point yet of recommending any of these to council, so that's why. So if it's referred back, it'll just give us a chance to go through all the motions or all the ideas people come up with and then pare them down, then recommend them, the ones we choose to council. Thank you.
I have nothing. Councilor Jones, go ahead.
Yes, I support that. I was a little bit perplexed by the agenda and the way that this was presented. So if I understand things correctly, section 11, which this is under, are committee recommendations. And normally, at least this is the way it's done on some other committees, the motion would start with that the Accessibility Advisory Committee recommends that council direct, and then so on. So in that case, we would have the committee directing council to compile an ongoing to direct the committee. So the committee's directing council to direct the committee. It seemed, when I looked at it, to be a bit strange. So I, perhaps it's just confusing to me, but in the future, if these are committee recommendations, if it could be prefaced, as it normally is, with that the Accessibility Advisory Committee recommend, and then the motion. Thank
We're
you.
really
That's
just on a
all. It's-
referral motion. We're not on,
Oh,
giving
I'm sorry
staff
if I'm
advice.
not quite speaking to it, but
no.
yeah, it seemed unnecessary to me, so I certainly support Councillor Savage's referral. Thank you.
Okay, unless there's anything specifically to the referral motion, I will call the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. Councillor Savage, you just want to move?
Yes, I move number 2 is referred back to the committee.
Okay, I'll second that. Anything to discuss on that? Councillor
Just
Savage?
basically the same reason. Thank you.
Okay, I got nothing. Anything through the rest of the council? Okay, I will move to calling the question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. Okay, the next one, I'll just make the motion that council directs staff to create an event application form that includes accessibility considerations. Is there a second? Second by Councillor Savage. I have nothing. It makes sense based on what I read in the agenda, so it's all good. Councillor Savage, if you wish.
Yes, thank you, and thanks to Director Long with presenting this. She has some experience with accessibility issues, so that's great. And again, what we're trying to encourage here is to have the committee and staff and myself come up with ideas to for a list of things. And with this, the committee's comments were to not make it too onerous, so that there would be, some, resentment or not liking all the things. To make it simple with the form was kind of the idea. So at any rate, that was their comments, and council's also welcome, obviously, to make comments of their own as what they'd like to see in event application form. And that would be my comment, that you don't want to make it too onerous, but to have people realize that when they're doing events, you should be considering those with walkers, wheelchairs, canes, that don't get about as easily, so they can enjoy the event as well as the idea. Thank you.
Okay, anything further from council? And just through staff, this is a motion directing staff to actually come up with the final end product. Okay. All right, I'll move then to calling question. All those in favor? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So perhaps through to staff, if you could just clarify, is this a motion that the Accessibility Advisory Committee passed? So this is a recommendation from them? Is that correct?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Jones, that's correct.
Thank you very much. So I am a little bit perplexed then. If we look at page 42, there's a motion there, kind of the middle of the group of 3, which says that the Accessibility Advisory Committee recommend that council install accessible playground equipment at a Lantzville park. And then it goes on. And here we have,
Pardon me, your worship, that's a different item on the agenda, Councillor Jones. So you're going into the next report that the committee attached to this? So that's for item 4.
fine, thank you very much. My point is that here there's a specification for Huddlestone Park. And I'm wondering how that decision was made, and what kind of sort of impact and assessment of all of the costs of the full plan. I just kind of wanting to see what this all, in the end, would lead to. I understand there's a grant, but there's talk here about accessible pathways and some other things.
I
So
think we're
what's
getting
the
way off
vision?
topic, Counselor Jones. We're speaking specifically to the event application form.
Oh, then that's my problem. I'm very sorry. I've jumped on to number 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, unless there's anything further, I'm gonna call the question on item 3. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. Now we're on to item 4. I'll just get the motion on the floor that council directs staff to apply for the Spark BC Grant, Local Community Accessibility Grant Program, with the intention to use the funds for accessibility upgrades in Hellstone Park with any remaining funds directed towards an accessible pathway from the washroom to the parking lot and other accessible pathways. Second by Councilor Lerner. For myself, and this is a pretty easy one to support. Everything makes sense in the report to me, so that's all I'll say for efficiency. And again, I think if everybody's in favor, then let's keep the efficiency of the meeting going. Councilor Lerner?
Yeah, just a little information I think is worth noting is that council had authorized the application of a federal Enabling Accessibility Fund grant. That grant was specifically for Huddlestone Park to install playground equipment in Huddlestone Park. That application is pending, and we hope to have good news soon. This is if I understand correctly, and through your worship to staff, please let me know if I'm wrong, this is an additional grant called the Spark Grant that instead of being federal is at the provincial level, and that Spark BC allows us to have accessible pathways for people in wheelchairs and strollers, et cetera, to be able to reach the washrooms. Am I, just through your worship, am I getting that correct or am I missing something?
Yeah, Deputy Long, go ahead.
Through your worship to Councilor Lerner and the rest of council, it is a separate grant through Spark BC. We have been speaking with them for quite a while. They actually reached out last year when they saw that we passed our accessibility plan, looking for some sort of project that we had. So this is a project that is ready to go if we receive the grant. And so I did speak to them about that other piece, and just they require to apply for anything we would use the money for to have a council resolution. So that's why it went through the committee and was discussed. So it'll also be used for potentially an automatic door as well at the washroom, which we currently do not have. So as well as accessible pathways.
Okay, thank you for that. And I, from the report, I'd learned what an omni spinner is. So it's fantastic. Councilor Jones, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for your work on that. Grants are really helpful. For me, I'm just not wanting to tie the use of these funds, if the grant is acquired, to Huddlestone Park. Now, obviously, the door would be really helpful there, the electronic door, so I understand that. But this also talks about accessible pathways, and the reason I don't want to tie it into Huddlestone Park is that there may be some problems with there. I don't know. Haven't seen some analysis on it, but for example, trucks are constantly going from the parking area at Huddlestone Park into the park. So if you were to put a concrete walkway or some other walkway from the parking lot to the washroom, you're not going to be in the situation where every time there's maintenance or an event at Huddlestone Park, you have larger vehicles driving over it. And I don't know if that is the appropriate way to treat an accessible pathway. So that question comes to mind. Some others do. It's a long way to extend the pathway all the way to the playground. All I'm getting at is it's great if we can get these funds. I just would prefer at this time if we don't tie them into a specific location, because we may find that there are other places which are more in need of using them. At some point, we will be looking at developing the Clark Med property with park, and that may end up being a lot more suitable. So my request would just be if we can remove Huddlestone Park and not make that decision right now, and insert as the Accessibility Committee has done on page 42 in their motion, which just says at a Lantzville park. It just, I think, gives more flexibility when the money comes, and we don't know if it will or how long it will be, and things could have changed between now and then, and I'd like the best facility possible developed with the resources that we end up getting. Thank you.
Deputy Long, and then Councillor Savage.
Through your worship to council, just a point of information is that this grant has to be used by March. And so this is currently the only shelf-ready project that would qualify for an application unless there's another project to create in time for the grant funds to be used.
Is there?
Yeah,
okay,
that-
just
thank
keep
you.
it quick, please.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I don't think that presents any problem with removing Huddlestone Park and putting it at a Lantzville Park. It still just keeps the options open for a little bit longer.
Councillor Savage.
Yes, this is a $25,000 grant, and it can be used for a broad spectrum of items. Doesn't even have to be at a park. So if council can think of other ideas, the idea of this, the main idea was to have an electronic door, accessible door at the washroom, and if anything was left over, these were just ideas that haven't necessarily been approved by the committee. They're just ideas to ensure that we can use all the 25,000 up. So if council had any other ideas for this grant to use, it doesn't have to be at a park. For example, I don't believe, through chair to staff, I don't believe the municipal building has an accessible door, does it? No, so it doesn't. So there's another option for that. I like the idea of the accessible door in the park because one feature of it is it automatically locks the door. You can set it on a timer. So it locks the door so you don't need a public works person to go and lock the door. And that's problematic because it's usually locked in the evening, especially in the summer. Someone has to go all the way there to lock the door. So I don't mind that, but I believe council can provide any ideas. So if council has any other ideas, I don't think a door would cost up to 25,000. I don't know what the cost of them is, but if you can think of other ideas like the door to the municipal building, I think would be a good one as it's used continually. And so it might be helpful for elderly people or people in wheelchairs to come in. I think that would be a good use for it, but it's up to council if you have other ideas, but I can just report from the committee, the main idea was the washroom door, and the others were peripheral ideas to use up the money. So if you have any other ideas to use up the money, you can certainly put them forward now.
Okay, I have staff, Councillor Savage, that wants to respond. Go ahead, CEO Lasher.
Thank you. In my previous experience, we did get the Spark grant, and we did use it in various places. In an effort to make it easier this evening is probably best to just give us permission to move forward, and then in future we'll have a fulsome discussion on how to use the funds.
Okay, Councillor Lerner, and then myself, and then probably
Yeah,
a close call.
I would recommend passing the motion as is. I think that it says it's going to be used for accessible upgrades in Huddlestone Park. It doesn't specifically say what that needs to be. It also says it can be, that if there's additional funds, it can say other accessible pathways. It doesn't say specifically that those other accessible pathways have to be in Huddlestone. I think the motion is fine as is. I would note that we've applied to the federal government to put accessible playground equipment for children with accessibility challenges in Huddlestone Park. And I don't think we can install that equipment and then have those children not be able to access the washroom there. So I think that this kind of goes hand in hand in the sense that if we're going to, if we are successful in getting that federal grant, which is committed to Huddlestone Park, then it makes sense to put the door on the washroom as well. And if there's other funds beyond that, then this motion, I think the way it's worded is fine. It'll allow for other uses.
Yeah, I've got nothing new to add, so go ahead, Councillor Jones, and then I'm going to call the question.
Thank you. I'd like to propose an amendment, please, which is to delete all the text starting with Huddlestone Park to the end and replace it with in Lantzville and including the electric unit for the Huddlestone Park washroom door.
Is there a seconder to the amendment? Councillor Savage is seconding. And before we even get into debating, if I can have it read back.
Moved and seconded that council directs staff to apply to the Spark BC Grant Local Community Accessibility Grant Program with the intention to use the funds for accessible upgrades in Lantzville and including the electric unit for Huddlestone Park washroom door.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you. I'm just trying to keep it open enough that we're not tied in. We don't have the federal grant yet. I sure hope we get it, in which case, yes, the additional funds are certainly going to go to the pathways. But for some reason, if that grant doesn't come through, this doesn't tie the use of the funds into that. It may prove that there's other areas that come up, such as electric door at Coston Hall, for example. So that's all, just keeps the options open in the future, as CAO Lasher has referred to.
Councillor Savage.
Yes, through chair to staff, is that specific enough, Director Long, for this grant to still be successful?
Through your worship to council, the previous motion was spoken to with Spark BC, so I couldn't speak to if this grant, the way that this motion is now worded. They do require usually a letter, but I did speak with them to ask if we could use a certified resolution instead, and gave them the version of the certified resolution that I'd be proposing to council tonight. But I have no more information to add other than that. Thank you.
So would it be, just to follow up, would it be helpful then if an amendment was just added to the end, or other accessible projects, so that the main thing was about the washroom door at Huddlestone Park, and then if it was and other projects at the end of this motion, would that be helpful to applying for it now? And because I think you said at the meeting that there was a lot of leeway with this Spark grant, that, you know, to do different projects, you didn't need to cement exactly. You know, you could have a list of things. Would that be a better way to do it? Then you could proceed?
Through your worship to Councillor Savage and the rest of council, yes, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, then I think it might be best then to defeat this motion and then just to amend it at the end and put other needed accessible projects. So that would be my recommendation, is to defeat this and just add that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll speak real briefly. For myself, I can support what the discussion that just occurred. I see this as being pretty straightforward. The original motion has to do with Huddlestone Park being the project site. And then all of a sudden to do it anywhere else in Lantzville, it just doesn't seem like to be a project anymore. It just seems to be like, let's throw the money where, you know, wherever. So this is a targeted project. Staff has spent a fair bit of work compiling this report and coming up with this project. And I feel like we're getting further away from the motion or the original intent. So I'll leave it there. I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor and oppose, noting that it is unanimously opposed. The amendment fails. Councillor Savage, if you wish to
Yes,
do
thank
this
you. I'll just
amendment.
make an amendment to see what council thinks. to insert at the end of the motion and other needed accessible projects.
Yeah, I'll second that. Go ahead, Counselor Savage, for discussion.
No, that's fine. It's just to leave open just in case there's other ideas when we get the grant. Thank you.
I'll support the amendment. I think it's fairly redundant because there's so many projects on, or sorry, so many items on here that it's going to be far in excess of the 25,000 we're applying for. The only thing I'm wondering is, do we have any monies in our parks budget that would support additional items? If council feels so strongly that maybe we need to be doing more in our parks, that we can actually use some of the money we have in reserves?
Your worship, there is money in the general reserves tax stabilization for additional items, but I would need to know the cost of them ultimately.
Yeah, for sure. Just listening to the general discussion, which is let's spend money on more accessibility stuff. That's fantastic, and maybe we don't have to rely on 100% grant funding for everything. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. Through the rest of the council, anything else on this amendment before I call the question? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Back to the main motion as amended. Anything further? Okay, I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. All right, moving right along. So we're on to the next motion. That council received the committee's comments regarding the Huddlestone Accessibility Playground layout for information. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Savage. Nothing to say from my end. Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this playground layout came to the Accessibility Committee, so we did have a look at it, and there was a few individual comments on it. And we haven't yet got the grant, but so I'm not quite sure how this fits into having it, but I think you do, it requires something specific, or this is getting ready in case we get the grant. We'll be all set, but I think it's in keeping with the original motion back from November 2024. November 2024, November 15th, 2024, I believe. The original motion was to direct it to Huddlestone Park. So they've done that, and now we have a plan that was done for it. So it seems reasonable. And just one question through chair to staff. Could you just summarize the funding, please? I believe we directed $70,000 in the budget that year, and it's now coming to fruition. But if we do get the grant, is the funding 50-50? Is that why we allotted $70,000, or what's the funding makeup of the grant, please, the original federal one?
Through your worship to Councillor Savage and the rest of council. So originally, before I was here, Trudy Coates brought a report to council regarding this. I was directed to put $70,000 towards accessible playground at Huddlestone Park. And then when I arrived in May of 2024, there was a grant opportunity pretty soon after that staff prepared. And so part of that preparation, we did use some monies to help us prepare for that grant out of that $70,000. And then the grant monies are not matched. So whatever you receive from the federal government is what you receive to use. And of course, all the regular rules apply of just costing out each item so that they see what you've spent your money on.
Oh, I see. So it's 100% funding then?
Through your worship and Councillor Savage and the rest of council, yes.
Oh, that's terrific. Great. Yeah, I was a little confused over that originally, 70,000. So that's terrific then. So, and the real benefit to this is that kids that aren't as challenged can use it as well. So it can be used by any kid. So it can be used by kids that have a need for accessible play equipment. And it can be also used, this new playground equipment, by kids that don't have the need for it. So it's really a great deal that we're getting an expansion of our popular playground there for all paid for if we get the grant. So we can keep our fingers crossed with that. And if you've seen the report, you're welcome to comment, I would imagine, on how it looks. I'm not an expert on playgrounds, so it looked reasonable to me. It was an expert that did it, so I refrained from commenting on it. There was one or two others in the group that did comment on it, so I'll certainly be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, any additional speakers? Go ahead, Councillor Lerner.
No, just to say that I appreciate the committee taking the time, and I'll note that tonight's motion is simply to receive the committee's feedback. So I have no problem doing that, and I fingers crossed that we get the equipment and that it's fully covered.
Councillor Jones.
Yes, that's fantastic that the grant covers all of the equipment. So what will remain would be accessibility pathways through to staff. Do you have any estimates on possible options for pathways and the costs?
Through your worship to Councillor Jones and the rest of council, I do have some costing information that can be provided to council. I don't have it off the top of my head right now. But for example, for the Spark BC grant, I did give them a breakdown of the square meters, gravel, paving versus concrete, staff time, all of those things. So I can provide that to council if they wish. And then I think the layout comments for tonight regarding the pathway and then the amount of the grant. So the amount of the grant, of course, we applied for up to $125,000, which was the max of the grant. So the amount that you receive might not be the same. So just to keep that in mind. And the current quote for that exact drawing that you guys have at the table right now is $112,000 for installation and ordering.
Thank you, that's really helpful. So we can take a look at the path portion of it later with a better idea of funding, and also to find out if there's any issues with large vehicles and fire trucks driving over the path when they access the park. So that's for another day, but fingers crossed that we get the grant.
Okay, and move to calling the question on receiving this for information. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Next one, council directs staff to prepare a request for quote regarding the purchase of accessibility mats as well as any other parking and access improvements needed to complete the scope of project beach accessibility and Moby mats. Second by Councillor Savage. I have nothing to add to this. Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, this is just a housekeeping matter. It's just on our list. We're adding this to our brainstorming list, as it were. And so with that, it'll be helpful when we make our final decisions as the best bang for the buck, and what we recommend are the top suggestions for council. Is it'll be helpful to get a price, just a rough price. And Director Long indicated it shouldn't take much time to get this done, just so we have a rough idea of what the cost is going to be. That's all we're doing here. We're not deciding to get these, we're just authorizing to having it priced so we can add it to the list. Thank you.
Okay. I move to call on question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Next one under 12 is new business. We have 12A, which is the Vancouver Island Regional Library updates. Councillor Lerner.
Yes, thank you. I'm pleased to provide a report on the budget process that has just been completed. The budget was passed by the board, so it first went to the Audit and Finance Special Committee that I'm pleased to chair, then to the Executive Committee, and then to the board where I'm vice chair. And I'm pleased to share that we have completed and approved the budget going into the next year. So I want to just provide some information to council. There are 3 attachments in the agenda. The first one I want to draw attention to is the pie chart. This is sort of the expected percentage of annual expenditures for the library for 2026. As can be seen, wages and benefits make up the majority of the costs, and then a lot of the other costs such as debt repayment, financing, and other IT and leases are basically fixed costs. So when we took a look at the budget, we were looking at basically keeping services the same and seeing how we could keep costs down, while at the same time recognizing that there are specific fixed costs such as leases and union negotiated contracts that are going to increase by set amounts. One thing to note is security costs. If you go back about 10 years, there were virtually no security costs in the library's budget. We probably spent $15,000 or $16,000 a year on security. That was basically setting your alarm at the different branch and maybe replacing the occasional security camera. Over the last 10 years, especially since COVID, security aspects have changed, and we now spend over $500,000 a year on security costs, which is not something we're thrilled to be spending money on, but there have been some requirements for that. The second chart that I would turn people to is the sort of the line graph where you'll see the long-term debt. Starting in 2010, there was an increase in long-term debt as new branches were built. Part of that means now that we are servicing that debt. It was excellent that we have all those new branches, but the library board has made it clear we don't want to move on to taking additional debt at the cost of the taxpayers and at the cost of servicing it. So we're finding creative ways to expand and continue our services without taking on additional capital debt. Additionally, I'm pleased to report that our reserves are now fully funded, although they are lower than we would like. There is no more unfunded reserves. We have now moved into the place where we're going to have, we have a 5-year plan to build up our reserves to the level we want them to be. All of that being said, that takes us on to the final piece, which is the breakdown by taxation. And essentially the bottom line is that we were very eager to have as low of a increase as possible at the library board, looking at the pressures of inflation, the fixed cost of contracts like with the union, fixed lease costs. We were able to keep it at 4.6%. 4.6% is the total levy increase. That includes the capital increase. So all in 4.6 levy. The way that works in the apportionment is essentially that 4.6% is plugged into a formula that the province has based on property values and population, and then it spits out a number for each municipality. So you can see some municipalities are actually seeing a decrease of 1 or 2%. Some are seeing an increase of over 30%. It's basically entirely based on the change in projected change in population and tax assessed value. Lantzville usually sits right around the average or slightly above because our property values tend to be slightly higher. And so we're coming in just over 6%. But it is, we don't have any control over which municipality sees which increase. We only have control over the 4.6. So that was a big thing that we wanted to keep it under 5, and we achieved that. And we very much look forward to going into the next year to see if we can get it any lower. So there we go. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Councillor Savage, you have a question?
Yeah, first of all, congratulations. That's incredible news. 4.6 increase. The CPI, BC's Consumer Price Index in July was 2.3%. So to be close to that, so you're only going 2.3% above the CPI, which is just fabulous. Really well done. Great. And I did want to mention, just if you wouldn't mind keeping in this the back of your mind, I see that facilities, which to me are the engine of libraries, or the facilities, was only 12.6% of the budget. Holy cow. And libraries are close to my heart. I just think there can be a place of refuge. I used to love going to them as a kid and reading and so on. And I haven't missed the fact that some kids with not the most comfortable upbringing that are facing some problems at home, I've seen them many times in libraries seeking, a place of calm and peace. And it's the most positive thing you can do when you're troubled is to read books instead of hanging around and getting into drugs and all sorts of other things. So I really appreciate physical libraries. They have that loose, they're just more than an online reading thing. And so I'm just wondering if there's some way you could still increase facilities, even if it was acquiring the land now, or coming up with agreements with municipalities for land now, where you purchase later, but just to start lining up facilities and then building the facility, which is where most of the money is at a different time, right? So I would just mention that to, and you can see if other members of the board agree with that just how important facilities are. I know it was a big deal up in Masset when you opened the new one, and it's preserving their language and so on. So there's such a beneficial offshoot to the physical buildings that I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you and well done.
Any additional questions? Well, thank you, Councillor Lerner, for the update. Moving on, we'll go to, flip my page. So we have the joint application for the SCBA PAC and equipment. So Chief Rukas, is there anything further to introduce this, or we can jump right in?
No, I think you can jump right in. All the information was provided in the report. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so I'll make the first motion that council authorizes submission of a regional grant application to the Union of BC Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for a total of $150,000 for 2025 volunteer and composite fire department equipment and training grant. Is there a second, Councillor Savage? Discussion through the council. Councillor Savage, if you wish, through the rest of the council. Move to call in question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. The council authorized the regional district in Nanaimo to apply for, receive, and manage the CEPF 2025 volunteer and composite fire department equipment and training grant on behalf of the district of Lantzville. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Lerner. Discussion. Councillor Savage, if you wish. The rest of the council. Call the question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously, and that council approved the $15,000 from the Equipment Reserve Fund to fund the additional costs for the washing machine not funded under this grant application. Second by Councillor Lerner. Discussion. Okay, hearing or seeing nothing, I'll call the question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. On to 12C, so the grant application for the Harwood Reservoir. Yeah. Director Robinson, presentation time.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a very brief presentation. I'll go as quickly as we can, and happy to answer any questions you have. So we're here today to talk tonight about a really good news item. We had a very positive conversation with the grant administrators for the REDIP program, and they think that this would be a very strong application. So I just want to quickly go over that. So our water system consists of 3 reservoirs. There's the Ware Road Reservoir, the Harwood Reservoir, and the Foothills Reservoir at different elevations. And a lot of this is going to sound familiar if you recall the Coors Water Report at the April 16th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting. And if you've read the Development Cost Charge Background Study, which was presented to Council in July of this year. So we have these 3 storage reservoirs. Coors has identified repeatedly that the Harwood Reservoir, which is the middle reservoir, which serves the upper pressure zone, needs cellular expansion. So it's located right on Harwood Drive there in the foothills. It's a little sneaky to get into it because you can see the little driveway at the bottom of the map there. It's just off Copley Ridge Drive. And you drive down there, and then it's a long bit of a driveway to where the actual reservoir building is, but it has great access to the main trunk line on Harwood Drive there. So the REDIP grant, it's the Rural Economic Development Infrastructure Program grant, and we fall under the Implementation Program grant stream. The maximum funding per project is $1 million, which is a huge grant. We're just applying for it at this stage, and don't have it yet. But if you refer back to the DCC technical report, Coors estimates that the expansion of the reservoir would run $3.1 million. So this would offset a third of the project cost. In the phase development agreement for the foothills, which is public information, they've committed to adding 1 cell. So if we can raise a grant for $1 million and the foothills can provide their cell that they're required to, then that radically reduces the total cost of the project. And if we're successful with this grant, we'll be approaching Lone Tree, which is the developers of the foothills, to proceed with constructing both cells at the same time so we can do so in a cost-effective manner. Our recommendation today is that council provides a motion to endorse the application for the grant to expand the Harwood Reservoir, and that the upgrades included in the technical report be put in the capital plan discussions as part of this year's budget process. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Councillor Leonard, go ahead, and then Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Through your worship to staff. So if I understand correctly, the project was estimated by Coors at about $3.1 million. It was recommended as a high priority. If we get the grant, that shaves off $1 million. Let's assume the Foothills also is able to commit to doing it at the same time. That shaves off some cost as well. But we could still end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars left in required costs. I'm wondering, we've collected a fair amount of DCCs, I assume, from the upper pressure zone that can only be applied to certain projects such as this. Would this be one of the eligible projects that those DCCs could be applied toward?
Your worship to the councillor, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Yes, two questions. The first is if you can narrow down the amount of money that the Foothills would be providing in support, so we have a better idea of the $3.1 million, how much it comes down to with their support. And the second question is there any agreement in place or discussions that have taken place with the Stenawas if water is able to get up to Northwind? Are there any agreements for contributions from them back, especially with respect to expanding this reservoir, which may be needed in that situation? Thank you.
Through your chair to the councillor, regarding your first question, this is really just at an early stage of the process. We've asked Coors to produce a more detailed estimate of the total project cost. And once we have that idea, we'll be approaching the Foothills. If you recall from the Foothills Phase Development Agreement, they're only required to add a cell when they register their first subdivision plan at the beginning of Phase 2. They've just completed Phase 1 of the Foothills development, which is all of the single-family estate and view lots. And the Phase 2 is the townhouse phase. They have a preliminary subdivision review approved several years ago to start the townhouse phase, but the project has stalled. Early estimates indicate that we're several years out from actually getting any kind of towards a final approval for that project. And Coors has several times now advised staff and council that this is a priority item, that we need the water storage expansion sooner rather than later. So we're always looking out for grants, so that's why we're looking at different grant programs. There seems to be a drying up of a lot of water infrastructure grants this year. Sorry for the pun. But the current political and funding climate, both federally and provincially, for water infrastructure seems to have been shrinking this year. So it's great that we found a program that we have an eligible project for, and that's really what we're seeking the endorsement of, so that we can get this application in before the grant deadline at the end of October. Your second part of your question, in short, no, there's been no formal agreement with the nation regarding water storage. I would suggest that there may be some negotiations around in-camera items that would be more appropriate to answer your question.
Yeah, go ahead.
This happens sometimes where there's PDA agreements for amenities, but then there's a time lag and the amenities need a little sooner. And so I gather you would be negotiating with the Foothills to arrange for a payback when that actually happens, whatever that amount is.
There's several different ways to do it. They may be able to provide us cash towards this project instead of building it themselves. They may sign an MOU that we front the project cost, and then when they get to that phase of the PDA, they just sign us a check. And instead of delivering that infrastructure, which the PDA requires, they just give us the cash to pay us back, since we've already built the infrastructure. So there's multiple ways to do it.
Councillor Savage.
Yeah, so these are some money figures I have, just to see if these are roughly what we're looking at. So with the foothills, if they're paying half, we don't know, it'll be 3.1, but roughly. So if they provide eventually, even if they don't participate at the start, they'll be paying half. That's about $1,550,000. And I'm correct to believe that Lantzville's portion, we'd get full use of the grant. So our portion would be less the 1 million, so we'd owe 550,000 of that sort of idea.
It's a very preliminary estimate the Coors has provided. We've asked them to provide a Class C estimate for the purpose of the capital plan this year. So we're hoping to narrow that down and get it a bit closer to the actual construction cost.
Yeah, but the point is we would not be sharing the grant with the foothills.
No, the $1 million
okay.
would go towards the total
All right,
project. Yep.
and I read, I don't know where I read it, it could have been in the Coors report, but I think as of July, our DCC balance was around 900,000. It's fine if you don't have it here, but
We don't have it handy.
sorry?
I have it. It's 937.
Okay,
The Director of Finance just reported it's $937,000, sir.
933?
937, sir.
937, thank you. And in the Coors report from July, it says that we're eligible to use up to 1,534,000 in DCCs to go towards that project. Does that sound roughly right?
So in the Coors report, when they're breaking down the water projects, they assign values to existing users and new development. So that may be where that number is coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in other words, it's likely a good deal more than 900 we could use towards this project in DCCs, water DCCs.
It's priority number 1 on Coors' list.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that we'd have high level of flexibility to use the maximum amount of funds if we needed to.
Yeah, well, that's what they've got. They call it recoverable DCCs. So, yeah. So I'm just underlying that this is really a good thing for Lantzville. If we're now down to 550,000 once the foothills put in, that we've already got enough funds to cover that with DCCs. And my last question, please, are there any other end users that would benefit from this that could be asked to contribute at some point, be it a latecomer's fee or something like that to recoup a bit of it, like the G property? Is that a possibility? Or?
Indirectly, yes, because it's a water DCC eligible project.
Yeah.
So if we end up using that 900,000 in DCCs, that would resolve that issue on the project list. And then as other development comes forward, because there's water capacity in the storage reservoir to provide fire flows, the DCCs from that development would then top up the funds that were used from this project,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
So in that way, that would be another source of funding, and I think it's about 6.5 million, the projection for the G with their proposal in DCCs, in which case water DCCs would be a decent amount of that 6+ million, yeah. Okay, well, that's great. Thank you for confirming that. It sounds like it's a good deal then too. And the application has to be in by?
October 31st, sir.
October
Although
31st.
the grant administrators are now on strike with the BCGEU, we're still going to get our grant in under the deadline, but I'm not sure if that's going to impact the processing time.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, thanks very much.
Okay, anything further? And I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Next motion is that the storage reservoir upgrades as recommended in the July 2025 Coors Engineering DCC technical report be included in the capital planning discussions for the 2026 to 2030 financial plan. Second by Councillor Lerner. Moved, I think, to call in the question right away on this. So all those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. Okay, that takes us on to the next item, 12D. So this is the Millard Drive and Lind Drive Water Main Upgrade Tender Award. Director Sapola, is there anything you would like to introduce before we get some motions on the floor?
No, Your Worship, it's all in the report.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'll move that council direct staff to amend the 2025-2029 financial plan to increase funding to the Millard Drive and Lind Drive Water Main Upgrade project from 600,000 to 903,000, which includes the tender contract costs, field services, and contract administration to be funded from the Water Capital Reserve Fund. Second by Councillor Lerner. Really have nothing to add here. This is obviously a project which is for people that are currently on the water system. Therefore, it makes sense that the funding comes out of the Water Capital Reserve Fund because that's who's paying for it. So, Councillor Lerner, go ahead if you wish.
Yeah, I support the motion. I just had a couple quick comments. This is a case where this project is a high priority. It is something that we discussed in our financial plan as it is something that needs to be done, and people have already paid for this through the reserve, the fees we collect. So the reserve fund fees are there for specifically for this project. The one thing I would note is that, you know, unfortunately, when we're seeing these sort of 12, 15% inflation on construction costs every year, when we get an estimate, we almost inevitably see the bids coming in higher than the estimates. So we start off at 600,000, that's what we budget for, and almost inevitably we end up at a higher price. So I think in the future when we do our financial planning, we just have to have a bigger buffer. I think we need to maybe be looking at this and saying if the estimate's coming in at 600,000, let's add 20%, because I think it just keeps happening. And it's also why I think we need to continue to beef up our reserves. But in the meantime, I fully support the motion, and I'm eager to see this project get underway as soon as possible.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
Well, hopefully those increases that we've been seeing will start to level out in the future. But through to staff, I just had a question for my own curiosity. The estimate of $600,000, what's the date on that estimate?
That's from the 2025-29 capital plan, or financial plan in the capital section. I would have to ask the previous director where that estimate came from.
So
Or
it
the
was
date on it.
probably done in 2025, that estimate?
Normally, those
2024?
estimates are reviewed on an annual basis.
Okay, so this is
Normal.
probably the increase from 600,000 to 903,000 is most likely a one-year increase? Reflecting 1
No,
year?
I don't, I can't speak to what he used for his inflationary factor. I did go back in history and I looked, and I did see the same number in a few other previous years. So this is likely to be probably a 3-year inflation factor.
Thank you.
So maybe this is a point of information with the 600,000. Was that with detailed design or pre-detailed design?
I didn't have any information to say that it was detailed design. It wasn't likely to be because the detailed design actually went forward this year.
Yeah, so I think
arrive at
that's
the
why we're
Class
seeing a huge jump is like after detailed design, and we're getting away from probably a Class D.
Yeah, this would be
Yeah.
a Class A because this is now tendered, so.
Exactly, yeah.
So,
So we're just getting more accurate, you know, quoting of prices. And I think often that happens when these things are getting estimated for financial planning purposes. It's just that, it's an estimate. We can always, pay ahead of time and get detailed estimates, but, we want to try and keep money in reserves and not just spend it on things that we may not do, so. All right, unless there's anything further, likely to call the question? Yeah, and I move to call in question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. That moves us on to the next one. That council directs staff to amend the 2025 to 2029 financial plan to withdraw the following capital projects: slip gate replacement, valve replacement, and water flush out valve repairs, and return the funding of $215,000 back to the Water Capital Reserve Fund. Is there a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Jones. Just creating money. All right, I got nothing. Councillor Jones. Okay. Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yeah, I was curious why we're not proceeding with this now, that we're withdrawing it. Through chair to staff.
through your worship to council, this is actually, when I investigated, these were a lot of smaller operational items that are just regular maintenance on the system. And there's no need for them in our policy to be included in tangible capital assets. as they're all under $10,000 items. So like, for example, to go out and do all the fire hydrants this year, which is the water, part of the water flush out process, are about roughly, I think the whole thing cost us about $12,000 to do the flushing out of all the hydrants and things like that. So these are nodes on the line that require operational maintenance programs and will be part of is really the last part of an asset management plan that you do, is all of the maintenance then of the items, or the regular maintenance is laid out in those plans. So,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
All right, I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor, opposed, that is carried unanimously. And the last one, that council directs staff to award David Stalker Excavating Limited, Millard Drive and Lynn Drive Water Main Upgrade Projects, Contracts 1 and 2, as per the recommendations from Coors and Associates Engineering. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Savage. I have nothing at this time. Councillor Savage, if you wish. And through the rest of the council? Okay, hearing nothing, I will move to call in the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. And, okay, that's good. And moving on to late items, so there's a couple. So I just threw to staff, I think everybody's got a photocopy of what we're gonna discuss next. Oops, wrong piece of paper. So what I have, I think everybody should have a copy of, is an email from Director Wells regarding it has a council resolution for the National Bank Play Your Court Program application. So it's a grant application. So, so that's what we'd be introducing as a late item. It is an emergent item, so that's why we'll be treating it as such. So that's what we're voting on, to accept this as a late item. I will move to calling the question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. So there's some motions on here, but maybe through the staff, is there anything to introduce or with respect to this? Yeah, go ahead, Director Sepulveda.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, council had indicated that they wanted to do the upgrades to the tennis courts. So we had retained our local grant writer to go forth and look for grants that we could apply for. There were a couple that were mentioned in one of the meetings. Those ones weren't available to us, but she did dig this one out for the National Bank. She's been in contact with the National Bank, and they have been actively communicating with us, and they are expecting our proposal to come through. So they had emailed us and asked us when that was coming through. So we wanted to get this before council, as this is the requirement to submit the application.
Great, thank you. What I'll do is I'm gonna get the motion on the floor, and then we can get into discussion on that. So, so the motion is, therefore it be resolved that council supports the District of Lantzville application to the National Bank Play Your Court program for funding to revitalize the Lantzville tennis court, and further that result. Well, and further that it be resolved that council commits to entering into a contribution agreement with Tennis Canada and National Bank, including acceptance of the sponsorship and naming rights, terms associated with the Play Your program or Play Your Court program, providing the necessary municipal funding contributions as identified in the application, and maintaining and operating the Lantzville Tennis Court as publicly accessible recreational facility for the long term. So second by Councillor Lerner. I've got nothing to add at this time. Councillor Lerner, and then Councillor Jones.
Sorry, I think you also wanted to second it. Sorry. I just wanted to share that this was the grant that I had brought forward a few months ago. And I'm very thrilled to see it as something that is being applied for. They have already done 34 courts, and they have a total of 100 to do. So that they're willing to fund, and their goal is to fund them by 2030. They've done courts in other places in BC, and essentially the funding is provided to revitalize it. I would like to see our tennis courts revitalized rather than go unused, but I'll leave it there.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you very much for this. This is good news. We did look at a pricing of what it would cost to resurface the tennis court, and it's looking in the neighborhood of $100,000. I notice here that I don't see an amount of money that this grant might provide. I'm wondering if there is one. And is there a required municipal funding contribution?
Thank you, again, through your worship to council. It is up to $100,000. There's no matching that's required, but they will only go up to 100,000, so anything over and above that is up to us.
Well, that's fantastic. I really hope we get it. A lot of people in the community will be really happy to see those tennis courts usable again, and that should probably cover all the costs or close to it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I will move to call in the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. Just before we deal with the next late item, I was just gonna call for a 5-minute recess. So we'll reconvene at 7:15. Well, actually, hold on, my watch is wrong, 7:17. Back to order. So we're on item 13 of our agenda, introduction lead item. So Councillor Savage, you had a lead item.
Yes, thank you. So these are two motions I'm proposing as a late item. They've been on our agenda since June for meeting after meeting, on every meeting since then. And they're open meeting items, so I'm hoping to get them done tonight. And the reason they're so timely, I'll tell you what they are, and then I'll explain why they're so timely. It's the two motions are that insert name be appointed as the chair of the Design Select Committee, that insert name be appointed as the alternate chair of the Design Select Committee. And generally in an election year, most major things get done by end of July, and that's about it. Then September, October, you don't see much getting done. So it's really important that we get this design committee going for
Okay, so I'm going to
projects.
interrupt you there.
Yep.
So we've got the general gist of what's going to be discussed. And so in terms of voting to treat this as a late item, I will move to call in a question on that. All those in favor? Opposed? Noting that Councillor Mandel's opposed, it carries. So got to get a motion on the floor.
Yes, so that insert name be appointed as the chair of the Design Select Committee.
Okay, is there a seconder? That's just getting the motion on the floor, and then we can amend it to insert name. So I'll second that. Get on the floor for discussion and to insert a name. Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
That Councillor Savage be appointed as the chair of the Design Select Committee.
Is there a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Lerner, and then for discussion, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
No, there's not much to this, and we've discussed it. I'd be very interested in this, and I initiated the idea of a design committee, so this is a result of about a year's effort and so on. So that's basically it. Thank you.
Councillor Lerner, seconder if you wish.
No, I have nothing in particular to add. My only thought is that in the new year, I know that Councillor Savage will be chairing two committees, so that's fine with me, but if in the new year you want to pick one and someone else does one, that's fine with me too. But yeah, that's good.
Okay, any additional discussion? Councillor Mandel?
I mean, I'm certainly not going to arm wrestle Councillor Savage for a committee position, but I also have interest in this position and would be willing to chair it. And I think, the only councillor that doesn't have an appointment to a committee. So again, I don't want to get into a back and forth over it. I really don't think that that's necessary, but I'm just putting it out there that that is something I would be willing to do if council wanted to go that route.
Okay, further discussion? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and I agree one doesn't want to get into doing any battles here. I know that your area of expertise is in health, and that you have some interest in accessibility. Perhaps that is a committee that Councillor Savage would be willing to give up. I also know that Councillor Savage has done a lot of work to get this committee off the ground in order that we can get projects which are design related done in the community. And I think when a councillor has that involvement from early on, it's nice to be supportive of that, and so I do support the motion.
Further discussion? Okay, and maybe a question through to Councillor Savage on this. In terms of the accessibility committee, we can follow this with another late motion with respect to that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, if you are so inclined to want to continue on with the accessibility committee. I recognize another member of council wishes to, you know, run a committee and chair that. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yes, I was the one that came up with that idea that Councillor Mundell is more than welcome to replace me as chair as the accessibility, on the accessibility committee, so absolutely.
Okay. So, yeah, after we've done the, I guess, this appointment and the alternate appointment, then we can entertain another late item, and I know Councillor Jones has one too, so. All right, so, anything further on this? Yeah, my only comment is, and, you know, I'm not trying to make things difficult here for council, but, you know, in terms of, you know, when we bring motions to this council, regardless who brings it to council, once it's moved and seconded, that the body owns it. It no longer belongs to anybody. So you know, I do acknowledge that, you know, people do hard work and roll up their sleeves and when bringing motions to council, but it doesn't mean they own it. It belongs to the body. And, you know, and I see that with all the committees, regardless what we're doing, you know, it's, the committee is to serve essentially the community through this council. So I'll just leave my remarks there. But I do want to make, obviously I wanted to make that perfectly crystal clear. You know, it's, again, this is just governance 101, you know, when we bring motions, once they're moved and seconded, they now belong to the body. All right, so I'll move to calling a question on the appointment. So all those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. Now it brings us to the second one, which is the alternate. So Councillor Savage.
That Councillor Mundell be appointed as the alternate chair of the Design Select Committee.
Okay. I guess I'll second that, but actually before I second it, I'll just kind of look. Is that okay? Now I'll officially second it. You just never know, right? Who wants to sign up for what? Discussion, Councillor Savage, if you wish, or Councillor, and then Councillor Mundell. For us to council. Nothing. Okay, I'll move then to call in the question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. And then for just kind of continuity, Councillor Jones, are you okay if we just go to the accessibility late motion? Absolutely. Okay, thank you. So through the council, late motion to deal with the appointment. Well, actually, I guess we have to do a two-parter, or actually maybe through to our parliamentarian. If we just automatically appoint someone else, we don't have to worry about unappointing someone.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure, I'm not trying to make it weird or difficult. I'm just trying to do it all in one swoop. All right, so yeah, I'll just make the motion, or sorry, so what we're dealing with is the late item of the appointment to the accessibility committee. So so as a late item, that's what we're voting on. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, that's carried unanimously, and then I'll just make the motion that Councillor Mundell be appointed the chair of the accessibility committee. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Savage. Do you still want that, Councillor Mundell? Okay, just double checking. Okay, Councillor Savage is a seconder. Okay,
No, I just think it's great. And congratulations, Councillor Mundell. Now you have two committees you're on. You went from 0 to 2. And thanks for the way you handled it tonight. Much appreciated.
okay, I'll move then to call in question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously, and then we need alternate. So maybe someone wants to put their hand up for the alternate, or maybe Councillor Savage, do you just want to be the alternate since you're already quite familiar with it?
Yes, I'd be happy to be an
So I'll make the
alternate.
appointment, or sorry, the motion that Councillor Savage be appointed as the alternate to the accessibility committee. Seconded by Councillor Lerner, and then any debate or anything on that? Okay, I'll move then to call in question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, so that's all done. I think looking across the staff, nothing else is required for this. Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones, you have a late item as well. So again, just in general terms, and then why it's an emergent item.
Yes, it's budget related, just to ask for the budget with the GL codes and line items as we've had in previous years. And it's time sensitive because we're in budget season right now.
Okay, so just through to council, I don't think this is really even item, I think, yeah, staff, I'm seeing right now, they're kind of shaking, no, it's not required. Yeah, go ahead, CEO Lasher.
Next week is the budget meeting. We'll have a binder for you. And we know that this request was made from Councillor Jones in person to the Director of Finance last week. But we're still putting everything together right now based on the limited information from one director to another director. So we will do our best to have it for you next week.
Fine, so I understand that, the time pressure. Could I make the motion, please, so it's on record?
I don't think it's required to put things on record. Like, staff has already made a commitment and
I don't know exactly what, I cannot, as any one counselor, direct one of our directors to do anything. So what I did was I mentioned to the director that over the last 3 years, we have had the GL codes with line items, and that might be the will of council to have so again. So just for respect to the work that's involved and to the rest on council, I feel council should have the opportunity to weigh in. I had no right to be making any such decision. That certainly wasn't what my intent was in the discussion with Director Sapola.
we can get a motion on the floor if needed, but I think staff, and I think I've spoken a little bit to staff on this anyways, and I think there's following the budget process we've done up to this point, and maybe we need to kind of solidify what the budget process is, so we don't have this kind of reoccurring discussion, you know, until, you know, whatever council of the day decides, you know, how that process to be, then, you know, they can change it. But I think we're gonna have the GL codes forthcoming, so I don't think it's really, unless council feels otherwise, then we can go ahead and treat this a late item. I just don't see this as a late item. It feels a bit out of order.
We'll be putting a binder together for you. You did get a capital plan last week, which will be updated. As the information becomes available, it will be updated. We know that's your request because you did make that very clear to the Director of Finance that that's your request. So we're saying that we're working on it. So will I commit to a time? I can't do that. But are we working on it? Yes, 100% we are.
Okay, thank you. So are you working on GL codes with all the corresponding line items on 11 by 17 paper as we have had them for the last 3 years?
Yes, we have.
Thank you.
Yeah. And all I'll say as a follow-up comment to that is, that's nothing to do with that. It's just, you know, in the past, I've not found that personally useful, but I will also, hopefully all the council will get that same copy, just because if there's references made at any of our meetings, then at least we know what we're talking about and where to find that information. So everybody obviously does it differently. I have it my own different style, but go ahead, Councillor Mundell.
I just have a question. If we're getting the binders at the same day of the meeting, do we need to have a meeting? Because I won't have time to actually look at the binder and look at the items. So I'm just wanting to ensure timelines and make sure we're using the meeting time efficiently.
You will be getting a report with the supporting documents in advance.
And again, I think it just comes down to process, and, you know, it's fairly customary that council has a high-level presentation about the entire budget, and then we get into the nitty-gritty after that, or the subsequent meetings. So usually, you know, it takes a meeting to digest the high-level stuff and the, you know, overview, and then to come back with some, you know, targeted motions and that sort of thing. So, all right, any notices of motion? Councillor Jones?
Yes, thank you. Can I just read it? I don't need to do any
Yeah, you can just
yak-yak?
read it, just know
Thank
whereas,
you.
it's just
Thank
the
you.
motion, yeah.
A notice of motion is that the District of Lantzville tree bylaw and DPA 1 water course protection be reviewed for loopholes.
Okay. And any other notices of motion? Guess I should have asked if there's any more late items, but figured that we had enough of those. All right, so public clarification, we have nobody in the gallery, anybody remotely registered? Okay, great. So we made it through the agenda, so I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Oops.